The apple tree, a most folkloric of fruits. It is thought to be one of the oldest cultivated fruit trees. To think of the apple brings images of sweet, ripe, polished fruit, romantic summer orchards of twisting fairy tale trees, leaves softly blowing in the breeze, creating a dappled shade. Spring blossoms tinted with pink bring a promise of future fruitful harvest, and then indeed autumn's harvest of crisp yellow-green and red-gold treasure. The crafting of ciders, butters and sauces, puddings, and then winter, a time of apple magic and a taste of summer sweetness preserved, a comfort in the dark months, a treasure of sweet fruit. There is much folklore surrounding this most useful of fruits and trees, and here I will tell a little, although I can assure you there is so very much more. In England there is a fey spirit known as the Apple Tree Man. He dwells in the oldest, wisest tree of the orchards. It is he who holds the key to the abundance of fruits that may or may not appear. One tale from the apple cider producing county of Somerset in the southwest of England tells of a man, a poor farmer, who on Christmas Eve offered his last mug of cider, a most precious brew, to the apple tree man and his trees, a libation and offering to an old fairy spirit. The apple tree man, he appeared to the poor astonished farmer, thankful for the honouring, and revealed to the man a precious secret, the place where gold was buried, enough to see the farmer safe and well for many months. The poor farmer thanked the apple tree man as the nature spirit disappeared. He found the secret place, and he found the treasure. The tale of the apple tree man evokes images of the Wassailing. This is an old tradition held on the 5th of January in the apple-growing counties of England, of toasting the apple trees and orchards with warm spiced cider and toasted bread steeped in the brew. This festival is held to waken the sleeping trees ready for the growing season ahead, frighten away any evil spirits or bad fairies, and ask the blessing of a good harvest for later in the year. Each orchard is visited by a crowd of merry revellers, led by their chosen king and queen. Music and song fill the air. The hot spiced cider is passed around in a special goblet for all those present to take a sip. The queen soaks the toasted bread in the cider, and she is lifted high up into the boughs of the tree, where she places the offering there. Cider is also poured amongst the roots in a libation, and a sacred incantation is recited. Here's to thee, ancient apple tree, them as bloom well bear well, hats full, caps full, full bushel bags full, and all under one tree, hurrah! Hurrah! At this the revellers make as much noise as they can, shouting, yelling, banging pots and pans to scare the evil spirits from the orchard. Finally, shots are fired into the branches just to make sure that no bad fairies and spirits remain to spoil the blossom and the fruits for the coming year. The wassailers then travel to the next orchard and the next. The fairies and spirits do not have an easy time of it that night. The apple tree is one of the trees known as a fairy tree. In older times, the small apples were left on the trees at the end of the picking and known as the Pixies' Harvest. This was in the south and west of England, where there are so many apple orchards. It is said that children were allowed to take these apples, scrumping them, and in some cases were even encouraged to do so. In Old English, apple trees that were grafted were known as imp trees, and it was believed that anyone who fell asleep under these risked being taken to the fairy realm. The fairies love apples. Their orchards are plenty in the other world. Any human that steals one of the apples and eats it can never return to the human world again. Indeed, the fairy queen warned the musician and poet Thomas the Rhymer about this when he saw the tempting apples that grew in her garden, telling him they were the fruits of the dead, that they would give the gift of prophecy. For the fairies, though, these apples gave youth, immortality, and rebirth, a common theme in a lot of apple tree lore. Thomas the Rhymer stayed in the land of the fairies for 7 years, and on his leaving the fairy queen gave him a gift of an apple, and with it the ability to see the future and to always know the truth. It is said that when he came back to the human world, his songs and his poems were filled with a poignant atmosphere never heard before. His was now fairy music. In tree folklore, the apple is a symbol of love. Of course, there is the forbidden fruit of biblical law that led to the temptation and banishment of Adam and Eve, although it is disputed that this was an actual apple as we know it, and it could have been a different fruit, as the word apple was used for a multitude of different fruits. However, this law I'm going to leave to other scholars. The apple, the most widespread of fruit trees and one of the most usual fruits, we will talk of instead as a symbol of love, fertility, contentment, as a positive force for community and family, as a vessel for hope and magic. Its very long life as a successful fruit-bearing tree made it a great prize for communities and families. Apples preserve well, help preserve other fruits with their pectin. They dry well, can well, sauce well. Apples would have been an essential source of vitamins in the lean winter months, a memory of sunlight and warmth and better times, and a sign of those better times returning. The apple therefore brings an association of endurance and abundance. The apple is one of those fruits that is so hugely aligned to our human social history, and therefore it makes sense that it is important to our folklore also, and mostly in purely positive ways. An Irish tradition of love folk magic tells that if one can peel an apple in a continuous length, the ribbon of peel, once it is thrown over the shoulder and when it lands, will show the initial of their future true love. In ancient times and in classical literature, polished apples would be presented to sweethearts as a declaration of love, and people spoke of being apple-struck, another way of saying love-struck. The goddess of love, Aphrodite, grew golden apples in her orchard that were used to beguile lovers and have them fall in love with each other. Therefore, golden apples were given as wedding gifts by those invited to the nuptials. An old tradition is to give apple pips the names of prospective lovers. They are one by one squeezed between the fingers, and the one that hits the ceiling is the truest love. A similar folk tradition from Durham in the north of England is to test a lover's truthfulness and faithfulness by naming an apple pip with the lover's name, and then put the pip on the hearth. If the pip makes a noise as it pops with the heat, the lover is true and the love is lasting. However, if no sound comes from the pip, the love will be doomed to fail. Halloween, Samhain, is a festival associated with apples also, and a little apple magic. This festival, at a dark, magical time of the year, uses apples for fun and divination. Apple bobbing, also known as snap apple or duck apple, is a fun and quite nerve-wracking game where bright shiny apples are floated in a bucket or bowl of water. The players will bob their heads into the cold water, trying to bite an apple prize with their teeth. The apple prize, once won, could be placed under the pillow that night, bringing dreams of a future true lover. In Cornwall, this time of the year is also known as Allantide, the first day of winter. Bright, fiery red apples would be polished until they shone and given as tokens of love and luck between loved ones. A similar game to apple bobbing was played. In this, a cross of wood was constructed and suspended from the ceiling. 4 lit candles stuck to each bough of the cross, and apples were hung beneath the candles. The trick was to bite the apples, claiming them as a prize, but with the danger of hot wax dripping and splashing on soft skin. A prize won, it seems, is not a prize without an element of danger. As with the bobbed apples, once placed under the pillow that night, the apple would bring a vision of the player's true lover. Maybe these games are an echo of the Roman tradition of also using apples in love games. Apples, symbol and fruit of the goddess Pomona, goddess of abundance and fertility, would be used in a similar game where the winners of the game, who were single people looking for love, would bob and bite for apples, and the winners would be the next to marry. Cut an apple in half, and you will find the 5-pointed star, symbol of the 4 elements and the otherworldly psychic element. The 5 points make the magical pentagram. One bad apple story, but infused with dark magic, is of course the tale of Snow White and the 7 dwarfs. The evil queen, her stepmother, jealous of the beauty of Snow White, disguises herself as an old apple seller. The evil witch gives the luscious red apple she has poisoned to innocent Snow White. The poor girl bites the apple and collapses stone dead, victim of the magic of the evil queen. Her dwarf friends mourn deeply at their dreadful loss, and they craft a most beautiful coffin for her burial. But during the ceremony, a handsome prince appears on horseback. He is struck with the truest of love at seeing the face of the beautiful Snow White, and he stoops to kiss her. At this, the witch's evil spell is broken and she awakes. They fall deeply in love and marry, a happy ending after all. Apples are indeed a most magical fruit. Apple tree is also associated with health, long life and healing. After all, isn't it said that an apple a day keeps the doctor away? And there is much to this folk wisdom. The fruits and cider vinegar are full of nutritional values, are wonderful for detoxifying and packed with vitamins. although I am not sure about the healing of warts by rubbing 2 halves of an apple on the offending spot, burying the pieces and watching the wart disappear. But hey, who am I to judge? Safe to be said, though, that apples figure heavily in folk and traditional remedies, healing and bringing about continuous good health. The Norse goddess Idunn, goddess of spring, eternal life and rejuvenation, is the keeper of the apples of immortality, and it is these magical fruits that she feeds to the Norse gods and goddesses in order to preserve their health, their vitality, and immortality. The Isle of Avalon, the magical island of Arthurian legend, is also known as the Isle of Apples, a place of fairy maidens such as Nimue or Vivienne, the Lady of the Lake, mystics such as Morgan Le Fay, a place of magic and healing. It was the place that the great King Arthur was taken to by beautiful boat, where his wounds were attended to by fairy maidens after his final grand battle. The Isle of Avalon, Isle of Apples, is said to be in the southwest of England, in what is now known as Glastonbury, at Glastonbury Tor in Somerset. Certainly the landscape here fits the legend. What are now hills surrounded by reclaimed marshland originally would have been a series of islands in low-lying lakes and marshes. And Somerset is one of those places renowned as a county of apple growing. But, as with all such legends, we only have the romances of the past to guide us. Some legends would have it that the great King Arthur passed away, and some would have it that he only sleeps still beneath the hollow hills, maybe the fairy hills, in locations as far apart as the north of England, the Midlands of England, the country of Wales, and Brittany in France. The shared legends have followed the spread of tribes and their tales. Avalon, the Isle of Apples, was also the place where King Arthur was gifted his magical sword Excalibur by the fairy maiden of the lake Nimue. Good Sir Bedivere returned it to her on the plea of his king as Arthur lay dying. It was also she who raised Sir Lancelot du Lac as a child, his foster mother, and it was also this powerful fairy sorceress who enchanted Merlin and locked him in a cave, or other legends say the bough of a tree. Maybe it was an apple tree. The lore of apples is infused with magic, healing, faith, enchantment, hope and love, enlightenment, eternal life and abundance, fertility and beauty. These apple associations are found in cultural mythologies and social folklores around the world, only a few of which I have touched on here. This seemingly most common of fruits, one that we take for granted in our modern lives every day, has been our companion since the dawn of agriculture, sharing our social and folklore histories, weaving its magic within our psyches and filling us with story, tradition, health, hope and well-being. It is something to think about when you next pick up an apple and take a bite. I hope that you enjoyed this video all about apples and apple trees. Really, aren't they the most amazing fruit and a truly beautiful tree? I love apples. I love eating them raw. My pets do as well. And I love cooking with them, and I make a lot of jellies and jams and pies and puddings and that sort of thing. They really are fantastic fruits. And the trees are so beautiful. We have 3 apple trees where we live now, 2 that are quite young, but one that's a real baby, so hopefully we can get good apples in the coming years. A lot of the apple tree folklore is European that I've used here, but I'd love to learn more about the apple tree folklore and histories from where you live. If you're in another country or in another county and you have apple lore in your country or county, please let me know in the comments below. I love learning more. Is there a fairy? Is there a fairy creature that you would like me to research and maybe do a video of? I'd love to know about that too. Who are your favourites? These are my favourites that I'm doing at the moment. Do you have experience of seeing the good folk, the fairy folk? Please let me know about that too. We love stories like that, as we have had experiences of our own. If you have enjoyed this video, please hit like and subscribe, and hit the little bell symbol too for notifications of our next instalment. Please tell others about the channel. Let's grow a community of lovers of all things fairy and folk tales, because all of these things help the channel, but also help keep our stories alive. Until next time, dear friends, keep well, brightest of blessings, and remember, do not play with the fairy folk, or you may end up in one of my folk tales yourself.